Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a review of a horror film from the USA, English language, released in the year 2015, directed by David Yarovesky, and this film is called The Hive. So The Hive starts off with this young man. He's woken up in a cabin. He doesn't have any recollection of what's just happened. He's got blood dripping out of every orifice. He's got black veins all over his face, and it appears that he has a deadly virus. So he's really struggling to come to terms with his newfound situation, and he's trying to remember what's happened. So he's got written on the wall, it says, "Remember this," and it has a picture of a girl all over the wall. So it actually appears that he was trying to remind himself when this situation would come. So he's trying to dig down deep within his memory to find out what's going on, but then all of a sudden he starts to have visions, and this is where the recollection of, the flashbacks comes into play, and he realises that the love of his life is in grave trouble and that he doesn't know where she is. So he has to keep on digging down into his memory to try and get to the whereabouts of his love, of the love of his life, and to uncover the secret behind this virus before it is all too late. So whether or not he can achieve this is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Hive. I actually really enjoyed this film. Now a lot of people might not enjoy it because it does take a very creative path, and I think the creativity of the film does get a little bit too much at times. I think it was a little bit too ambitious for its own good, but overall it's a very creative film and it is trying something a little bit different. Now this is a movie about teenagers, but the thing I really liked about it is that it's not aimed at a young adult audience, which is something that I was worried about. And I saw the trailer, I thought this looks really good, but my hesitations were there because I thought that it was going to be a melodramatic sort of made for teenagers rubbish, such as Twilight and all that kind of stuff, where they really cheese up the emotion and it feels like you're watching something very juvenile. But that's not what I got. I was actually very surprised at that this was a very mature sort of film that will appeal to not only a young audience but also the older audience, because it doesn't get obsessed with the melodramatic rubbish that Twilight gets stuck on, and all these other kinds of films like Divergent. You got that element of sexual tension between the characters that seems very superficial. But in this film you've got the main character and his girlfriend, and I thought the chemistry was there. It actually felt realistic and it actually felt very sweet and charming. So for that reason you get frustrated at what's going on, and you actually care about the current situation and how it's going to unfold. And so it kept my attention from start to finish, and that is something I have to applaud David Yarovesky for, is because he has taken something that appears to be a very shallow experience, but he's made it a lot deeper than you would first anticipate. So the movie is told by flashbacks, but I think the flashbacks really work to its advantage. Now other films, the reason why I don't like flashbacks in other films is that it distracts you from the current situation, and more often than not the current situation is a lot more interesting than the flashbacks. But in this film the current situation is stuck inside a cabin, nothing is going on, so you want to know how this character came to this point. So when the flashbacks come out, it's like they're feeding you breadcrumbs to the clues, and so each flashback, it feels very relevant to this topic because it gives you more of an understanding of the current situation. And because he's made the actual current situation so boring, it makes you want to go back into the flashbacks. So I thought the use of flashbacks was utilised very well, and it actually gives you an insight into what I said was a very charming relationship between this guy who was not annoying. He actually felt like he was really a caring sort of guy, and then you've got this woman, this young woman, and as I said, the tension, there is no sexual tension. It doesn't feel superficial. It actually felt like this guy really cared for this girl. So when as the movie unfolds, you actually feel, because the connection is there, it hits you on a much more of an emotional level. And so it has a lot of depth to it, and that's something that was the most surprising, and that is the reason why I would recommend this film to a lot of people, is because it is more a case of a tragic love story than it is a horror film, so be careful of that. But the horror tone to the film is always there. So although you are watching a tragic romance, and a romance that is torn apart by the current situation, you still have that underlying sort of tone of horror that's always there, and actually makes you feel like, although you're watching a romantic film, you are still stuck in a terrifying sort of situation. So the horror element is always there, it's always underlying, and it's always around the corner. But this tragic love story is made even more better because of the fact you actually care about it. It actually feels authentic. The dialogue between the two of them was actually quite decent, and as I said, the sexual tension is not there, which is something I really appreciated, because I think that's a cop-out. Just have beautiful actors on the screen and that sexual tension, but because it's the sexual tension and because it feels like they just love each other because they're good looking, it feels very empty, it feels very superficial, and it feels like it's just basing it for the sake of the film. It doesn't feel like they have a connection, and so for that it does become a distraction. But in this movie it feels genuine, and I really like that. Now the makeup for the infected was very good, especially towards the end. It actually reminded me of the Evil Dead in some instances. There's some brutal violence in there as well. So this was one of the biggest surprises I've had in a while, because I went into it with an expectation that was completely different to what I actually got. And so the movie does take a lot of creativity and a lot of spins. There's a little bit of a twist in there. But my only problem with the movie is that it does bombard itself a little bit too much. There is a little bit too much going on for its own good. So while you're trying to work out what exactly is going on, you're missing out on the current situation. So you're trying to dot the I, join the dots together, but at the same time you're missing out on something else. And so you feel like instead of actually staying on top of things, you're always playing catch up. You're always trying to catch up to the situation, because the clues that are left behind aren't that easy to follow. And that's ultimately going to warrant another viewing, which is not a bad thing. But I think that if it was a little bit more simple in its approach, it would have been a lot better, because there are elements that are a little bit confusing and you just take too much time trying to figure it out, and at the same time you're not really enjoying as the movie continues. So it's a little bit of brain work, in the fact that, as I said, David Yarovesky, he does chew off a lot, and it's a little bit more than he can swallow, because it bombards you time and time again, and you just feel a little bit disorientated. And that is my only real criticism of this movie. I thought the ending was decent. I would have liked it to go down a slightly different path, but having said that, it doesn't derail the experience. So this is a movie based with young adults, and you would initially think that this is a movie towards young adults, but it was very surprising to see that there is a very mature element in there that does make you think, and it does show you the power of true love, and there's a lot of mystery to it. I thought the flashbacks really contributed well to the progression of the film, but as I said, there's a little bit too much going on to make it a great film. But overall, this is definitely a movie I would recommend if you are bored or you don't have anything else to watch. You put on the Hive, and I'm sure that you will like it. I thought the cinematography was very dreary. As I said, there's always that undertone of horror, and you've got a tragic romance as well. So overall, for the Hive, this was a lot better than I thought it would be, and I'm going to give it 3 stars. Alright guys, that's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.